Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I want to talk about getting over a slump in language learning. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have more motivation, you'll be having more fun, and getting more effective results in your language learning. And I think the first thing that I would stress with this video is that this is a very common problem. Many people face this kind of feeling of just being in a slump. I faced it multiple times, and it's totally normal and part of the language learning process in of itself. Now, that being said, how do we get over this slump that we're facing? Well, I think the first thing that you should try to do is really identify why you feel this way. Why do you think that you're in a slump? And I think there's a lot of common reasons for it. Some of the more common kind of things that I've seen and personally faced is you feel like you're not making progress. Maybe you're at that beginner stage and things are very challenging and you just feel like you're not progressing, you're not learning a ton, right? Your vocabulary is not expanding, or you're really stuck in that intermediate phase and you're having a hard time enjoying compelling content. I think the second kind of reason could be you're not having fun in your language learning process. You're really burned out, you're kind of bored of the app, you're trying to find fun ways to learn the language, and things are just kind of grinding you down. You could also be learning the language for superficial reasons, and those kind of reasons are slowly fading away, and you don't have those kind of that why for learning the language. So whatever your reason is, I think it's important to try to identify it, and whether it's you're not having fun or your progress is a little bit slower than you would like. That's the first thing. I think that the second thing to look at is really, when we talk about being in a slump within language learning, I think that if we know why we're facing that, now we can kind of tackle that problem with more clear-cut solutions on fixing the problem. And I think that generally speaking, one way to really kind of go after this is through consistency and discipline. So in a lot of cases, what I've found is that, when you're facing that problem of not feeling like you're making progress, right? Typically what happens is, you're just kind of stuck in this place where you're not measuring things. You feel very much lost in the desert of language learning. And I think that a great way to kind of overcome this is pick an activity and just stick with it over the course of many weeks, many days, and try to track your progress. And if you do this, it will tend to, I think, get you out of this slump and then feeling like you're making more progress, and you'll eventually kind of notice that. And so if you wanted a good example of this, I think that in a lot of cases, let's say you're a beginner or intermediate, the biggest thing that you can do is learn a ton of words, right? You want to get that foundation in vocabulary such that, you're going to be able to understand more compelling content, you'll be better at speaking, listening, etc. And so let's say that you're a beginner and you're really struggling with the kind of feeling that you're not making progress. Well, try to learn 5 new words every single day without fail, or 10 words or 20 words, and do that every single day for 6 weeks. And I guarantee you that if you kind of stick with that, you're going to probably feel a lot better about your progress in the end of the day. But we need to stick with that consistency, right? Try to make it manageable, but learn 5 new words every day, or 10 new words, or some sort of goal, and track that goal, right? Make a check mark on a notebook that you've got your 5 words in for the day, or kind of write down how many words you learned, and stick with that plan, right? And I think that the key here is to identify why you feel like you're not making progress and go after that activity that's going to be the most high value for you, feeling like you're getting results in the language. So, and as I said, for the most part, I think for beginners or intermediates, it's going to really come down to vocabulary acquisition. Try to make some sort of goal around learning words. But it doesn't have to be vocabulary acquisition. Maybe you're really frustrated with your speaking, and now instead of doing kind of a goal around learning 5 new words every day, tell yourself that you're going to practice speaking to yourself for 15 minutes every day or 30 minutes every day, no matter what, for 6 weeks. Just do that. 15 minutes, 30 minutes of speaking, no matter what, every single day for 6 weeks. Or let's say you're really struggling with listening. Same idea, 15 or 30 minutes of listening every single day without fail for 6 weeks. And I think that pick a time period and really try not to reflect too much about what you're doing, right? Just stick to the plan and just see how it turns out 6 weeks from then, right? You don't want to kind of constantly be downing yourself, right? I think it's good to just kind of stick with that momentum and stick with that plan for that length of time that you kind of set for yourself overall, right? And so whether or not you're doing something with learning words or practicing speaking every day or listening or whatever, just, stick with the plan, right? But make sure that that activity that you're doing is a smart one. It's going to be high value, whether it's practicing speaking, learning words, right? Make sure it's a impactful thing, right? You want to make sure it's impactful such that we can get this feeling of having more progress after a month or 6 weeks or whatever it is. And you can apply it, like I said, to any idea, right? Whether it's, I'm going to review grammar without fail for 15 minutes every single day. Stick to a plan, try to make it manageable, but really try to have that consistency built in, right? Because ultimately, if you feel like you're not making progress, we really got to identify why we're not feeling that way. It's usually tied to one of these areas, and then we want to tackle it, right? The only way to get out of this slump is to attack it head on. And the way I think that is best to approach it is just this kind of very much this consistency every single day with the activity that we're struggling with, and make it a high value activity that we're going to work on every single day, right? And I think that eventually with that consistency and that power, you're going to get over that slump. So that's one aspect of getting over a slump. But maybe you're not facing this problem and you're having trouble having fun, right? You're just very bored with the app or the things that you're doing. And it's just really tough. Well, I think that one of the biggest things you can do is try to start using compelling activities in your language learning, whether that's a Netflix show, playing a video game in a foreign language, practicing reading. And this is kind of where I think a lot of the fun in language learning is, whether it's practicing speaking with others or listening to interesting and compelling content, reading fun stuff. But at times it's very difficult. It's very challenging. And basically, because it's very overwhelming and challenging, I think a lot of people shy away from it, and they go back to the beginner app or to endless vocabulary flashcards or whatever it is. And those things can be good, right? The app or whatever it is. But I think that eventually you want to get to a place where you're using that fun and compelling content. So my suggestion is to try to go into it and dive deep into trying to enjoy that compelling content. Now, there's going to be a degree of trial and error. Some of the material is going to be too hard. You're going to need to go to a different book or a different podcast that's a little bit easier or maybe more fun. But at some point, you do have to stick with it and just keep going. And I think you should try to apply a similar kind of process to that compelling content with the method of the results that I talked about earlier. So, for example, let's say that you're really struggling to have fun, but you really want to practice the language by playing a video game. Well, tell yourself that every day you're going to play a video game in 30 minutes, but in the target language that you're learning. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. But stick with that plan for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. And what I have found in my own experience is that gradually you're going to get better at it. It's going to become less overwhelming, and you're going to start using that compelling content and enjoying it. Same with reading. Maybe you're struggling with reading. Practice reading every day. It's going to be tough at first, right? Especially if you're reading something very compelling and kind of more designed for natives. It's going to be difficult, but you're using fun and compelling content. And I think that will help you to have a lot more fun in your language learning, but just stick with it. Create a plan of doing language learning every day for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. It can also be with practicing watching Netflix, right? You got to just be consistent with it and really just start trying to use the compelling content and dealing with the adversity that you're likely to face. Now, of course, it's also going to depend on your skill level, right? Maybe you need to learn more words to enjoy that compelling content. Maybe you need to continue to do those other aspects of the language learning process, right? It's not to say you should, not use those other activities, right? I think it's always important to continue to be learning new words and improving in the language in general. But assuming you're doing all those things and you're not a complete beginner and you're more in that intermediate phase, I really think that it would be a good decision to try to start using that compelling content, but really stick with it and deal with that adversity, because over time you'll start to really enjoy the content more and more. It'll become less overwhelming and you'll get more and more out of it. So if you're not having fun and you're in that kind of slump from just boredom or things are becoming a grind, try to instigate some novelty into your language learning and use compelling activity, because I think that can help you to get over your slump. So those are kind of two ways that I would approach getting over a slump in your language learning. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.